Welcome to Leader. Today we're talking to Steve Riggs, partner in charge at Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. Carr, Riggs, and Ingram is a top 25 nationally ranked CPA and advisory firm located in more than 25 markets across the country. Offices stretching from New Mexico to North Carolina and throughout the state of Florida. They offer traditional, specialized services, including audits and assurance, business consulting and support, forensics accounting, IT audits, SEC compliance, business valuation, tax planning, and tax and estate work. Within the Carr, Riggs, and Ingram family of companies, they also deliver SOC reports, investment banking solutions, business consulting, wealth management, data analytics, and payroll services. They also have a podcast, so check that out. It Figures, the CRI podcast, was created to provide insight into latest developments and regulations into the accounting and finance space. Their wide variety of topics span across multiple industries and cover everything from benefits of outsourcing, all or part of your accounting functions and preventing fraud, to exploring captive insurance for your organization, while also hitting the buzzworthy things like PPP, EIDL loans, hazard pay for employees, and other governmental fund relief as it relates to COVID-19 pandemic. You can listen to this podcast, It Figures, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, and the CRI website. Check them out at cricpa.com. Now on with the show. Welcome. So glad to have some of the prominent leaders in this area and in accounting. You know, I have to say, we are so well known at the University of West Florida for our accounting program. Although I'm not an accountant, but I am so proud of what we do. And today, Steve, you've graciously given us your time to talk about leadership. And of course, with Rick Fountain, our dean, our leader, we're talking about commonalities about leaders. Both of you are fabulous leaders. You care about the community. You give of your time, which is we're finding as a theme. So I kind of want to just kick it off and say, you know, just ask off the cuff. We have not talked about this before, and I'm kind of just going to add it in, is, you know, did you have mentors? Where did you get the idea about giving back to the community? Why is that so important, do you think, at this point? I just want to kick it off with kind of that question of who was the leader that you looked up to?
Now, are you asking me or are you asking Rick?
I'm asking either one of you because Rick doesn't. I just threw this out there. Rick doesn't know this either, but just off the cuff. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, when I was a young man in public accounting, I worked for a very large CPA firm in Jacksonville, Florida, and did have a mentor. I did. There was an upstate New York guy that had relocated to Jacksonville. Very strange to me, because he had a far different upbringing than I did, you know. But I had that mentor. He was extremely smart, mentally brutal, but high standards, and so I had a mentor early on there. And then in that same firm, the leading rainmaker in the firm, the guy that could just get things done, bring in business, solve problems, had an incredible work ethic, was always the first guy in the office to be there, and a lot of times the last guy to leave. I saw him from the business development, the hiring side, the management side, the positive leadership side. So as a young man, early on just how to conduct yourself in public accounting, I had two very good mentors that were very different. One was ran the tax department, efficient, brutal, in a lot of ways. And the other guy was a great person who built that CPA firm and grew it. And I have drawn on those experiences as a young man all my life. And those are examples of the professional side, not necessarily the other side. We'll let Rick maybe throw in some stuff, and then I might get back in there.
Yeah, Rick.
I think it's interesting. Steve has been, in a sense, a mentor to me. We've served on the University of West Florida Foundation board together, and we've had a lot of chances to visit. But we learn from one another, and I can go back to some mentors earlier in my life. But one thing Steve Riggs said that has resonated with me ever since the day he said it. He was talking about serving people. He said he grew up, his family had a grocery store, and his father said, "You do not make people wait that have money to give to you in service." So, what a great lesson that was. I had a guy that I had a joint venture with on some law cases, and I learned a lot from him. We would be getting paid by a client, and I said, "Well, it's just a small check." And he had more money than any lawyer I knew, and he used to say, "Rick, there's no such thing as a small check." So what he was teaching me as a leader is you don't overlook the small check. There is no small check. Every check is important because that represents the bonding of that relationship with your client. So I think that I've been lucky enough to cross paths with people like Steve Briggs and other members of the accounting profession that graduated from West Florida, and some really great lawyers. And
the good thing about Rick and I, we're good long-term friends. We like each other. We talk about things that are personal that don't necessarily impact my accounting firm or the University of West Florida. But having a good person, because I can call Rick and say, "Rick, here's a situation. What do you think?" Or he can call me and do that. But I do know that today I pull off experiences I had as a child growing up in my father's grocery store. I had a very good opportunity to work a blue-collar job and work as a child. I had the ability to make money as a child and have my own money. And then I saw my father deal with shoplifters. I saw my father deal with people asking for money asking for food to eat.
Yeah.
And he never turned anybody down. So as a child, when you see hard work and a man generous to those less fortunate, and a man that wanted things clean and neat and nice, and son, don't make him stand in line and give us money. Just so many skills I pulled from my father and just the grocery business that we've translated into our accounting firm. So that's just one example, but you got to have good friends like I have with Rick that you can talk about a lot of things that aren't directly on point with West Florida or coverage in Ingram, but they dang sure help make me a better man so that I can talk to him on.
So part of if I can interject a little bit is what to me makes a difference in the great leaders versus those leaders that are leading is the human side of it, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And so, my question is, what leadership traits, Steve, do you hold high? And that, you talk about your friends, but what would you say if you could give advice to somebody about a trait that really stands out to be a great leader? What would you say?
Well, it's easier to be leading when you're winning. It's easier to be quarterback in the third quarter when you're up 35-0. But the thing is a lot of times things aren't going so good. Things are tough, and in tough situations and when sticky situations, if that leader will make sure that he or she takes responsibility for their own actions and they lead by example. And when it's time to be a leader, be out front. If someone's going to take the first bullet, you've got to be that person. Those are the kind of things. Leadership is hard and easy. Like I say, when everything's going good and everything's just flowing good and everything's great, being the leader, that's great. But man, when the economy's bad and things are tough and people have doubts and man, it's just it's not good. That's when leadership is really needed, and that's when you can really make yourself or not. But a lot of times leaders don't want to take responsibilities for their own actions if they don't go so good. A lot of times you got to stand up and go, "Yeah, that was my decision and I was wrong." And people will respect you more for that versus the chickens that hide. And there's a bunch of them that do it.
Yeah, and I have to say, in today, Dr. O'Keefe said something about basically the same thing, which is authentic leadership, and really in the time where it's needed, it kind of bubbles up, and we're seeing that especially with some of the cutbacks that we're hearing about and things like that. So
Right.
that is a common thread. Rick, you want to add something to that?
I was thinking about, Steve is so right. The love, as attempt to be a leader at the College of Business is to find ways to give people that work with you. We're so lucky to have you as an associate dean, but I try to give that credit out when things are really going good. But as Steve said, the cowards run and hide, and they want to point the finger. I think one of the greatest exhibition is when you stand up and say, I will assume responsibility, even if it was a decision that you should have made that a subordinate made, is you assume responsibility in those tough times. I saw that with my dad, and I remember as a young man, someone would take advantage of him, in my perception, in a business transaction. So I'd get mad and get a lawyer and sue him and all that. My dad would say, that was my fault if I made a character judgment or mistake. But they won't get a second chance, but I don't have to go and fight back. I just take care of my business and accept responsibility. I think it's a good thing. And I'm glad Steve mentioned it. Dad, Allie heard me, and I think, Steve, you were kind enough to come over when I was in the interview process, and I had not reflected much as an adult on the leadership qualities and traits I learned from my mother. I thought a lot about her, and I made the point that she called me up one day, and she was in a wheelchair and had been in a bad accident. I was a young boy, and the children were playing in our yard, and she mentioned to me, she said, I noticed other children seem to follow you. I think you have the ability to be a leader. And I want you to remember that all these children that come and play with you, and whatever you do in life, no one you deal with will be better than you are. But more importantly, you need to remember you are not better than any of them. You can always be honest, treat people fairly. And she said, I don't care what you're doing, you can be kind. And I see that about Steve. We've talked about difficult decisions that needed to be made when we would be brainstorming, and he's never rude or angry. He might have that inside, but he's kind the way he has a human side. And I'm talking too much. I want to go to Steve. But one thing Steve did, I'm a big high school fan. My high school's playing tonight. I have my colors out. I'm going to the ball game.
I've got my colors on, and I'm going to my ball game too tonight.
So I think we have that in common. But I want to comment on Steve. He was tired of his high school having to go play their home football games in their rival stadium. So he stepped up and wrote a large check. And I'll mention Steve. Most people know him as a CPA, but they'll say, "Oh, he's the football stadium guy." So that's leadership. Your community needed that. I want to commend you for that. But talk a little bit about making that decision, Steve. I'd love to hear how you went in that process.
Sure. Well, for about 35 years, Fort Beach High School played across town, home and and then and then an opportunity came for some dollars to be set aside for a football stadium, but it was going to be not enough to have anything nice. So the school system went around to the money guys and said, "Hey, we'll name a stadium after you for this amount of money." And nobody would do that. So I went to the superintendent, committed to that amount of money, but I said, don't name the stadium after me. Let's name it after someone else that might give maybe a lesser amount. Of course, he said, no, if you're committing to that, then we'll name the stadium after you. And of course, I ultimately contributed over 3 times that amount of money because I wanted exactly, if it's got to have my name on it, I wanted exactly how I wanted it. The best artificial turf, best red aluminum stands, the most bathrooms of any high school, men and women's of any high school in the Southeast, the concession stands for our band. And so anyway, I was fortunate to be in a position at that time to do that. So I committed to a certain dollar amount and contributed over 3 times that. And we have, in my opinion, one of the better high school football stadiums in the Southeast. And I will be there tonight at Steve Riggs Stadium when we play our crosstown rival. Had I not done that, we would be going across town and playing football at the other high school, and it'd be a home game. But now we're going to play our home game tonight in our stadium. Man, I'm just lucky. See, I was just the right place at the right time. The facts were it just worked out. So that's an example of me being lucky. And I was very thankful to be able to do that. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. I'll tell you that. It's wonderful.
So it's a gift. I was going to say, it's a gift that keeps on giving. And by the way, luck, kind of, yeah, but no. You're giving so much back to a lot of people. And it's like in education, it's very similar to probably why Rick and I went in at the university level. You never know. You never know the impact that you're making. And so I have to say, on behalf of the band, of the athletes, and then all the people that love to go out and feel part of it. Thank you, because that does make an impact, and you just don't know. All right, Rick, what were you going to say?
I thought you were getting ready to say on behalf of those people that like having more than one restroom.
I've had 3 sons that played football, and I've been to every football stadium in South Alabama and Northwest Florida, and it's not good. So I just counted all the heads at Choctaw and at Niceville, and then we wanted more than the sum of those 2 high schools in ours. So we've got 24 male heads and 24 female heads in these bathrooms, so that when you go to a big game at a stadium, you don't wait in line. You just don't. So I just want, that was just one of the many things I did to make sure that our stadium was comfortable, that where people would want to come and attend a game, home, whether you're a visitor or part of our home team.
I think what Steve described in the beginning of that is he did what a leader does. No one stepped up, so he stepped up and said, "Let me kick it off and let someone else get credit for it." That's a leader doing things for the right reason. But then also a leader wants quality. He decided, if we're going to do this, I want to do it right. We're going to do something quality, and that's how he grew the 20th largest accounting firm in the country. We take a lot of pride in that, and there's friendly rivalry. We have some other great graduates and doing interviews with them, and it's fun to talk with one of Steve's sons, Stuart, or Stu, relocated to Pensacola from New York, and he talks about the friendly rivalry and the other guys in the accounting profession. So you've brought your sons and your daughter up to have an appreciation for other people that they may be business competitors, but you respect what they do. And
sure.
I've noticed that when we have our advisory meetings or something, that guys that might be your business rivals, y'all usually get together and chat, and you take an interest in what your alma mater. First time I saw Stuart, we were talking about UWF. He went to another university, but he said, "My dad loves the University of West Florida. He loves that school." And so your children understand that. And so I think that's what a leader, you lead at home. Your dad taught you lessons, you taught your children, and the apple didn't fall from the tree with you.
See, I feel that education, and that's why I put a lot of emphasis on education. I think education you can take any from any social or economic or racial or any kind of background. And if they can get an education, it levels things. And then opportunities are just there. So here in America, it doesn't matter where you start. Opportunities are everywhere. And if you'll just get educated, and you don't have to go to a university necessarily to do that, but in certain professions you do. But man, education is the key to anybody improving their lot in life. So a lot of times it goes generational. It's not lost on me. It's not lost on my 4 adult children that the Riggs family and the Crawford family, my mother's side, we came out of the cotton fields of Arkansas. Just bust your tail, grow cotton, grow soybeans, farm, and eke out a living. That's the way it was. My parents said, "You're going to college." And they knew that would help move the family unit along. And then that changed the economics of us from picking cotton.
Yeah.
It's not lost on me that it's different for me now than it would have been had I gone and become a farmer at some level.
And what I hear, go ahead, Rick.
My friend John Grisham came out of the cotton fields over in Arkansas, his family. So
yeah, his area, he came from 10 miles from where both of my parents lived.
No kidding.
John Grisham has a great work ethic. I enjoy that, and he writes human stories. But I'll tell you something about John Grisham as a leader, since y'all come from kind of the same soil over there in Arkansas. He was embarrassed that Mississippi didn't have a kindergarten system when we were in law school.
Right.
And he made a commitment that he was going to get into politics long before he wrote his first book, to make sure Mississippi had gardens. So he came up from the art. I came from a blue collar father, and he didn't know how to tell me about preparing for the ACT and all those things, but he knew that there would be a better life. And he used to tell me he worked hard because he wanted me to have a better life. Well, he was trying to pass along something just like you were talking about your father. So I think that I'm going to talk about West Florida a bit. I was up in Batesville, Mississippi yesterday talking with a very successful man about doing something for the University of West Florida, no previous connection. And he was talking about he takes a chance. He's in the tire business. And he takes a chance on people all the time, helping them get an education. He said, I'll get them out of jail. And I've never failed. I've never had a person that didn't do the right thing because I help them. I'll help them go to school. It may be trade school, it may be junior college, but I've never had one not be a success in life that I tried to help educate. And so that's what a leader, he just wants his community to be better. And that's what I see with Steve Riggs. You and I have a mutual friend that works for you.
Right.
A student said, I think probably the only thing he needed was an opportunity and build a little self-confidence, and you've given him that. And he knows my birthday, he knows every holiday, and he always writes to me.
Good.
And
He's a great guy.
expresses his gratitude that I was part of that, and he talks about you're a mentor for him. So I think that's leadership, is that you see someone and you try to make a difference in their life. Just like you said, it's transformational for our families. Your children have different expectations than we grew up with because you were fortunate enough to get an education and be successful. But I love this business, and you might as well be in the education business. You're educating them in your business, and you've been so generous to the university. And anytime we call you to speak or to help with something, you never say no. And it's not as easy for you as it is for someone that's in town with us. But that's what a leader does. You say yes anytime it's humanly possible. So I appreciate it.
The University of West Florida has made a difference in my life. I took that education that I got there. I went to what's called a junior college, and 2 years at West Florida. I took that accounting degree, and I've turned it into a quality way to support myself and my family, and it's worked out. It's worked out well. So hard work, education, some luck, more hard work, and good things can happen.
Allie would probably say that the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Right. It's interesting. Sometimes as I reflect back and I tell some of my younger partners, some of my younger staff, there have been times when I've been at work at 6:37 at night, and the phone rings, and it's been some of my biggest clients now that were not big then, but they had a problem, they had an issue. They went through at that time the phone book, and they needed a CPA, and I answered the phone. And then 10, 20, 30 years later, they're paying you 50, 100,000 in fees. But that opportunity came when they made a phone call, and I was still at work to answer the phone. No one else was here, and I've got 3 or 4 of those guys. And again, sometimes you can make your own luck. Sometimes you don't. You're just lucky. But there's no substitute for hard work to increase your chances of luck.
I'm gonna piggyback on that story. I had a law partner, and undynamic, the laziest guy. He's almost as lazy as I was, but he never worked on the weekends.
Right.
He was a Mississippi Delta planter family.
Right.
And so one Saturday, he did not want to do it, but he was trying to work on his tax return. There was a lot of people at his home, so he went to the office. And the best client he ever got is one of the large corporations in Mississippi.
Right.
That was in his office. It was a chemical company. He had called 12 law firms. Nobody. And this guy said he almost didn't answer because he didn't want to be bothered, but he answered.
Right.
And he became the lawyer. So that is when luck sometimes crosses the path. But that became for the rest of his career. He always had a great position in a law firm because he had a great book. He had one client.
Right.
It was the largest client that any firm he was ever in had. So there's a little bit of luck, but it's that same story. He was there and he did answer the phone.
Right.
You're there working, trying to get that kind of like that. I get going in the afternoons. A lot of times it's hard to leave because it's just a few more things I want to finish. So I don't start the next day behind, and I know your work ethic. So.
And the good news is, for me and certainly a lot of people in my profession and other professions, I really like what I do. So it's not like I dread going to work on Monday. Man, I like what I do. I get up there out of bed every day, and it's encouraging to go to work. So, you do so many things. As a CPA, you do a lot of variety of work. So if there's ever a day I'm bored, and that's rare, all I got to do is come over the next day because something else is going to happen and it's fun. But fortunately, I like what I do. And it's really not work. I'm not the quarterback of an NFL team. I think that might be more fun, but I still like what I do. Enjoy coming to work. I think it shows. My clients get it, and it's fun.
So I'm going to ask. It's interesting looking at it from a gender side. Is how do you balance that? Because I tend to, and also I come from 24/7 hospitality, always open.
Right.
So that's kind of in my DNA. Weekends
Sure.
or workends. Just all of it. But I do love it, and I've loved it for a long time. But the question is, when does it get too much? How do you balance it? How do you figure out that family component? Because sometimes we get so much joy out of work that
Right.
so I'm interested, either one, Rick or Steve, how do you balance that? Can you?
Well, I'll start first, Rick, and then you jump in. But what I did with 3 boys and a daughter, we did sports. So it's T-ball, Little League baseball, youth football, youth soccer, a lot of baseball, and I would always coach them in teams. And many times we might have a 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock game to get the kids home, and I might go back to the office. Now everybody can work at home online, but raising my kids and all, I would still do that. We always went to church. And so we would do the family stuff, and but then I'd work sometimes at night when they're asleep. And again, I didn't plug into a big operation. I started out. That's why I have great respect for sole practitioners and small firms and 10-people firms and 20-people firms, because I've been in all of those categories.
Yeah.
Now I'm in over 2,000 person firm,
Right.
but I don't look down on anybody or up on anybody. I have respect for everybody. But on the personal side, to answer your question, is I used coaching sports and a lot of that stuff to spend time with my kids, and then I'd be pulling out of getting out of a suit, putting my shorts on to go coach a ball game or something like that. So that's what I did to help break it up.
Yeah, it's commendable. Rick?
I think that's a very interesting story, Steve. I was fortunate that I got a second chance because I have a couple of older children and 3 younger children. And with the my older children, I was more wrapped up in trying to get a law practice going and doing those things. And it's hard to say I was not quite there as much, but sports was a great way. As my younger children came along, I made a commitment. My father was always too busy to come see me play any kind of sports. And I think he really wanted to, but I made a commitment when they came along. I was thankful for that chance, and I would go to whatever they were doing. And I coached Little League, and God knows I even tried to coach soccer. what a debacle that was. But it was being with those children and taking the team to practice, or we rented a trolley one time to celebrate. It was just that time. It forced me to set my calendar so I had family time. And I think you're right, Allie, to ask that question, because I had so many friends that totally lost sight of their family. And it was trying to get one more billable hour, one more client, one more patient. And they turn around and their children are grown. They have grandchildren that they don't really know. So, that can be very lonely. But I love Steve and our friends on Facebook. And he's gotten turned into a photographer. He has 2 twin grandsons, and he takes pictures of them playing sports. And I love it. It just, him and one of the most prominent accountants in our region takes time to be there, not just with his children, he's there with his grandchildren. That's what a leader does. He learns how to balance, because if we're not doing it for our families, and we don't want a generational change, why are we doing it? Just
Right.
leave our name on the wall somewhere?
Not good enough.
So with that being said, there's a couple of things that I made note of for both of you, which is kind of different than I think a lot of students or young professionals look at it in today's world. Is there's not a lot of, they look at it, you can just jump into leadership and read a book or two and apply it. However, hard work is what I'm hearing both of you, and that comes with me as well, us in the industry, in the hospitality industry. But a lot of hard work when you're coming up and expect it, but that also builds the character. In addition, great leaders give back. And they give to their community. And if they're not giving to the community, they're creating it. And they're seeing an opportunity for innovation, as we call it, inspiration, as today. So both of you, that's what I'm hearing in this time that we're together, is that is a common theme that both of you have talked about, whether you know that's coming out or not. So that's commendable. But there's a point that when you're young and working a lot, that giving back to community may be too much. You may need to spend that time with your family, as you were saying, because that's important. But if you have a long career, love what you do. That's also what I'm hearing, is love what you do, because it will go into a long career. So you can do all these great things along the way and leave your legacy. And with that last legacy word, how would you like to be known as a leader? What is it that your legacy that you want to leave behind as a leader? And because this is the ending of the podcast, what are your last words, and what do you see yourself as leaving behind? Steve.
Rick, you go first on that. You might help me out, son.
I've been so blessed that I started off and worked in accounting a little bit, and then I went to law school and had a law career, and my wife and I were blessed to do some things for our communities where we lived, and now I'm in education. And I think if I have a legacy, it will be that I had a chance to come back to UWF, and I tried to make a difference here. I don't need my name on a wall, but that employee of Steve's that remembers my birthday, and that's the legacy I would like, is to think that somewhere along the line I've impacted some student lives. That to me would be so much more of a legacy worth having. If it's only in the minds and memories of the students that I touched, that's so much better than if I had something in the law practice. I'd want a famous case or something like that. But I think to improve the lives, our students are primarily working class, middle class family children and students, and they come here. And if I have a legacy, I hope it will be that some of them will remember I helped make a difference in their life in a positive way.
In my particular case, very similar. Hopefully, I've helped a lot of people along the way. Try to make changes for the good. I personally think I've been part of changing public accounting, at least in this area of the state. And then, there's a lot of young men and women that I've mentored over time and grown them and helped them make partner. And then, so anyway, you just want to be remembered that you actually did something good for someone and moved them on. For example, earlier, that impacted me 35 or 40 years ago. Well, here I am today. I could speak for 24 hours on all the things I learned from Alpha. Well, hopefully there's going to be a guy 25, 35, 40 years from now that might say, here's what I learned from Steve Riggs. And this is what I'm still doing today, and or whatever they're doing. So, both Rick and I, we want to help people. We want opportunities for them. And then you can lead them to water. You can't make them drink. Man, if you lay that out there, and then just do good, and then give everybody opportunities to support and encourage people. It's a brutal world out there, man. Just anytime anybody wants to do anything, criticism is everywhere. So, what I like to do is cut through the crap and try to be positive. Just try to be positive. I was meeting with a partner in another office in the state. It was just like, Steve, when I meet with you and after an hour or two, I just feel better because the energy's high and you're happy and you're positive. So as we're dealing with issues, man, we got a way out. So anyway, that's kind of what I hope I'll be remembered as, is he did something for the good and helped some people out.
Yeah, and I think that, at this point, that is what it is. And Steve, when you were saying that, it always comes to my mind is surround yourself with those type of people, because
Right.
you always do better. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to have a diverse workforce. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about, those people that fill you and don't deplete you. And that's really important for all of us, but especially for leaders at your level, at Rick's level, at all top levels, is to surround yourself with people that are kind, that are similar, that you can have those conversations, because not everybody is like that. So I want to thank both of you for your time. I want to thank you for wearing your high school football colors, whatever those football games are for tonight. And for the service and what you do for our community and for University of West Florida.